Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby Laws, and these are my co-hosts.
It's for Wells.
I'm nuts.
We appreciate all the support on our recent content, and before we do get started, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for more content and updates.
Yes, we're back. We're here at it again with another video. It's been a minute, and the last time that we were here, the Mavs were not doing so great, and now they're still not doing so great. And now they fired Nico Harrison, right? The man who actually did put together a couple of good teams for the Mavs, right? He was able to bring in Kyrie Irving when his stock was at an all-time low. He was able to trade for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. They went to the finals, right? We talked about that. Then even in the summer, they added Klay Thompson, they added Najee Marshall, and then Luka gets hurt, and then we do a live stream because we get the notification from Shams that Luka Doncic was traded to the Lakers for Anthony Davis. So just probably going to go down as one of the worst trades ever from a Mavs perspective, at least. But either way, after that, we got to see the first game with Anthony Davis, and then he gets hurt, and then the Mavs kind of fall apart. And there was a brief stretch, right, where Nico Harrison looked like he might have been able to take a victory lap, right? The Lakers lose in the first round to get Cooper Flag. But then the roster, once again, does not start the season off very well. Now, this was a team that both you and I, Yarby, took the under on. We were not super high on this team.
Yeah.
We were kind of questioning how they were going to score. We didn't know when Kyrie Irving was going to come back. We didn't know how many games Anthony Davis was going to play. And even though we really liked Cooper Flag, we weren't quite sure that he was going to look great right away. And pretty much all of those things happened, right, for the Mavs where, yeah, Kyrie Irving still isn't back. We don't know when he's coming back. Anthony Davis has gotten hurt. I think he's played in, I think maybe 9 or so of the 40 whatever games that he's would have been available to play as a Mav. So that hasn't worked out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has all kind of resulted in Nico Harrison getting fired, right? We know the fans. We know they were very angry. We watched games where literally Mavs players were at the free throw line and you would hear fire Nico chants while they're at home in Dallas. And yeah, they fired him. I don't think this will all go away, right? So just by firing him, just by slaying the dragon, that doesn't automatically mean you're in the clear. It's going to take some time. They're probably going to have to get someone else to come in and clean up this mess. The owner obviously has to, or team governor has to take some fault as well, right? Because he has the final say on this, so clearly he was okay with it. But now the Mavs have some work to do in terms of cleaning up this roster because now you have a team where, yeah, you probably don't have much of a real chance to contend like maybe some people thought. So what do you do with this team, right? Because you still have Anthony Davis, but you're not getting a Luka Doncic level player back for him, right? The Lakers were able to get Luka by trading Anthony Davis, but whatever the Mavs trade and get back for AD, it's not going to be that. You have some other players as well, right? Like Klay, he's kind of been in rumors now, right? Because he doesn't really fit on this roster and he's not played that great. You can't trade PJ Washington because he signed the extension. And then after that, you have guys like Najee Marshall, Caleb Martin. Do you even potentially think about Kyrie? I guess you have Daniel Gafford as well. But so talk to me. So what do you two think about this, right? Because obviously everything was kind of lined up for the Mavs with Luka to be a perennial contender, championship level team. They went to the finals, seemingly improved their roster, but now it's back to square one, right? For them, thank goodness they got Cooper Flag. But other than that, it might get pretty ugly, and they might as well kind of sell off some of these guys because this is the only year I think for a while where they're going to have their first round pick.
Yeah. I agree with you. I'm blowing it up entirely. I'm getting rid of AD at the deadline if possible. I'm going to probably eventually move off of Kyrie as well. And I would just kind of go head first and leap right into, the Cooper Flag era. Don't know how great it's going to be, especially compared to the Luka Doncic one, but I just don't think that there's really a way that you can go forward with, AD being kind of the forefront of the organization. And then, you'd have to wait for Cooper Flag to develop, and you might as well do that, but build a legit, team around him more geared towards, his strengths and weaknesses, less so than, a guy like Luka, right? So, or even AD himself. So, retool, sell all that you can possibly. And yeah, like I said, just really blow it up. That's the only thing that I could really suggest here because there's not a ton of flexibility, right? It's not like, they're like the Thunder or another team that has, a ton of flexibility down the line, right? They don't really own a lot of their assets. So at this point, I really don't know what to do but just kind of throw in the towel on this one.
Top notch. Take it away. Since obviously now you're here, so let's talk about it. What do you think?
Yeah, man. Listen, sorry I have no camera up. That'll be fixed next episode. But honestly, I seen. Listen, trading Luka was the dumbest decision in the world, right? I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah.
But I do see his vision on 2K. That's the only vision I see is on 2K. Because what he's seeing is, okay, we got AD, hopefully a healthy Kyrie. Hopefully they're hoping that you get prime Clay, Gafford, Lively, Najee Marshall, PJ Watson are, a solid role player. So I see the vision, right? The problem is this isn't 2K. These players are older. Anthony Davis, you can never really rely on, right? Like you just can't. It's funny that they traded a player that doesn't play defense or, isn't in shape at times for a player that, and to correct you, Yarby, I think it's 14, Chris. I think it's 14 out of 40 games he has played with the Dallas Mavericks. Yeah. So that it's insane. So like I said, on 2K this looks good, but what I will say, I do think they fired him too soon. The reason why, yeah, I do think they fired him too soon. He was automatically getting fired. Automatically getting fired. What's the point of doing it now or doing it at the end of the season? Right? I don't. This team is not a playoff team, and even if they're a playoff team, they're going to be a playing team and get bounced out real quick in the West. So I think you kind of let his vision, right? And I'm putting my hands up, like his vision. Let's see if his vision can work because we never really seen the team together, right? That's what you're hoping, in his sake. So I do agree with you guys. I think it's time to blow this team up. I think the first piece is Anthony Davis gone. And I think he fits with Chicago. I think there's other teams that he can fit with, right? But as soon as he's gone, I think it'll be easier to move off other pieces. But yeah, I mean, this Dallas Mavericks team, it's messed up because Cooper Flag came into this year as a generational player. A lot of people are so hyped with him. He's going to do this and that. And then he gets put in a tough position, which, yeah, number one picks do get put in tough positions. But to have your GM fired, to have that kind of that thing over his head that, yo, like, Luka brought this team to the finals, and they really missing Luka right now. You know what I mean? Like, this organization, the fans want Luka. Like, I'm just kind of the backup prize. And these are kids. They still have they have the same mindset as us. Like, so I think it's a lot of pressure on him. And then lastly, Jason Kidd is putting so much pressure on Flag by putting him as the point guard. I get it. Nowadays, 6'8", 6'9" point guards are the wave. But I think that's the reason why the team is struggling as well, because they don't have a true legit playmaker. Like D'Lo is not it, right? Just not it. He's not a good basketball player. He's just not.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
I disagree. I think he's a good basketball player, just not probably for the Dallas Mavericks at this point. But I see what you're saying, and he has played better. Not he is in D'Lo, but Flag has played a lot better at the forward. Yeah, the forward position, he's been balling out. His averages are much better.
Yeah, they've changed the lineup. Like Clay comes off the bench, right? And now they don't run him as often, at the point guard spot. And like you said, like he's tall, he's got a lot of Swiss Army knife, jack of all trade type skill sets, but he's not really a point guard. Because I remember for the Spurs, because I saw them in person against the Clippers. I think it was 2 seasons ago, right? And that was the stretch where it was like Jeremy Sohan is going to be our starting point guard, right? And it didn't really look that great. But for the Spurs, when you watch him, sometimes like he'll move the ball, he'll make good reads, and it's like, oh, well, maybe that's why they did it at that point, because he can do stuff like that. But yeah, like now it's like Brandon Williams, I think, is the starting point guard. Max Christie starts instead of Clay. So it's a different team, but it's still probably not good enough in terms of what people wanted. And the thing with an Anthony Davis, in terms of like where he could go, like he could probably fit in pretty much anywhere by and large. It's just a matter of, he wants to play a lot at the 4, but he's really a center at this point in his career now, right? Like he's not quite as mobile. He's still like a good athlete, but he's not quite as, not quite as athletic as he was, when he first came to the Lakers and prior to that, right? Just now because he's older, he's had some injuries, but The only issue is that if you're another team, right, how many teams just have players that they can just be like, oh, let's trade these guys to get Anthony Davis, right? Because most of the top teams, they're not going to probably make a move like that. But like, for some of these other teams, like you mentioned Chicago, like could they, trade pieces to get him? There was an article that came out from Clutch Points. We're recording this on Friday, but there was an article that came out earlier in the day, and it was from Brett Siegel of Clutch Points, where he was talking about that the Lakers, according to the information he grabbed, right, had kind of been shopping AD for even a little bit longer than that, right? And like they were talking to teams like Boston, I think Milwaukee as well was in that article. But just it's kind of funny, right? Because in terms of what Nico Harrison did, like he wanted Anthony Davis, like you said, top notch, right? He felt like he thought that he would be a better centerpiece for that Mavs team than Luka, right? But just it hasn't really worked out in his favor. Right now he's been fired. So we'll see what happens with the Mavs in terms of the moves that they make, because like you said, yeah, you could wait to see what it looks like when Kyrie comes back and he's healthy, but when is that going to be, right? Like right now, AD, they've held him out for about 8-9 straight games because him and the team governor Pat Dumont, right? Like he is trying to make sure that medically he can be okay to play, so that way he doesn't tear his Achilles because he's got a calf injury. So it's just rough. It's basically the worst case scenario for the Mavs, right? Like if you kind of tried to picture what a disastrous season for the Mavs would be like, this is pretty much it. And this would kind of be an example of why, even though you mentioned you can understand the vision, this would be an example of why you wouldn't do it, because, even though it's the disaster scenario, it's not an improbable scenario, just because you are building around two older, more injury prone players. And, okay, let's see what happens next year. But the next year, those guys are even older. So I don't know. I don't think this will be the same team by the time we get out of the deadline. I could be wrong, but I feel like we're going to see some big moves made in Dallas. Apparently, Mark Cuban now has more involvement as well.
I think what they were trying to do is like you go Kyrie, Clay, Cooper, Davis, Lively, and then you or whatever the case is, or have PJ Washington in there, and they're just hoping that okay, maybe this team can compete in the West. But yeah, no, listen, Luka's probably top 3 in MVP conversation with Shea and Jokic right now, dude. It's like you don't trade a generational player, and it's nothing against Cooper Flag. I just never see Cooper Flag being what Luka is. I just don't. So, yeah, Dallas Mavericks are cooked. I'd be upset to be a Dallas Mavericks fan right now. And I think the last straw was when the fan had a conversation. I believe you said his name was Patrick. I believe.
Patrick Dumont.
Yeah, when the fan had a conversation with him, I think he says, "Yeah, we can't have this no more, man. We gotta move on."
Yeah, because he flipped off the owner, and then his parents made him apologize to Dumont, and then they had the conversation. He was basically like, "Yeah, this was a mistake." But then that's the question: if you're a Mavs fan, can you really trust that the ownership is going to make the right decisions? Because they've already basically less than a year after trading Luka, when they were so convinced that it might work, they're like, "Oh, well, now this didn't work." So, I mean, I guess on the one hand, you give them a quote unquote 2 thumbs up for bailing on something that isn't working. But on the other hand, you could have just not done it in the first place.
Exactly. I don't understand it. I don't think we'll ever understand it though.
Right. Yeah. So, moving on to our next topic, right? I figured we're almost a month into the season, and I figured now it might as well be time to check on a lot of the rookies, because this rookie class compared to last year has been fantastic, right? Like there's been a lot of really good players in the draft. There were a lot of players that both you and I liked, right? We talked about a lot of those coming out of the draft. And, so I figured we all might as well kind of bring up, some players that we like, players that we don't like, and just kind of talk about what we've seen so far, from them, right? Obviously, we know Cooper Flag, right? Because he was the #1 pick. He's got off to a slow start. He's looked much better as of late. As you mentioned, right? As you mentioned, top notch, he's not a point guard. But he does have a lot of really strong skills, to his game, and he's been able to get downhill a little bit more with, the team that they have around him. But there's a lot of other good rookies we might as well talk about too, right? Like you have Knipple for the Charlotte Hornets, right? Who's actually the leading scorer amongst rookies so far in this class, right? He's been playing for Charlotte. They've been kind of shorthanded because LaMelo Ball's been out. Brandon Miller's been out, of course, unfortunately, in terms of the injuries for them. But he's, I mean, he's pretty much as advertised. He's the best shooter in the draft, 40% from three on 8 attempts a game, giving him a little bit of everything, right? 6 rebounds, 3 assists. And, he's able to get his shot off very easily because I've watched him play in a handful of games. And I like his game a lot, right? And so far, he's looked really good and kind of every bit of what Charlotte has hoped for, in getting, somebody who can kind of fit alongside what they have, right? I mean, all their rookies honestly have been good, but what do you guys think? How come you guys might as well also bring up some rookies that have been super impressive thus far, even maybe some unsung ones that we don't talk about as much.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think you do have to start with Con Knipple, obviously, right? Like that was a guy who I think a lot of people kind of questioned the pick when it first did happen, right? Just because they were like, oh, well, Ace Bailey's right there, but at the same time, you can't really fault Charlotte for taking him because, like you said, we knew that he was going to be NBA ready. We knew that he was going to be a sharpshooter. It was just a matter of, does he have the ability to do the little nuanced things? And I think he's more than capable of doing that, right? He's willing to pretty much be whatever they need him to be night in, night out. Granted, Charlotte's, not had an amazing season, but I think the brightest spot has been Con Knipple for sure. I think Edgecombe, obviously, he had a hot start. Kind of tapered off a little bit, but still is playing at a phenomenal level, right? He's doing a bunch for that team on both ends of the floor and the motor, and it's just pretty much the perfect fit between, him, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, and maybe eventually Paul George or whatever. But I do want to shout out one guy who I think we were a little bit lower on,
Mhm.
especially around Summer League, was Jeremiah Fears. Shout out to him. I think he's had a pretty strong rookie campaign for sure, along with Derek Queen. Might as well kind of pair them together,
Yeah.
I guess. Lots of talent there. Do we like the fit together with all those guys? Probably not, but I think they've been a bright spot for the New Orleans Pelicans. Maybe you can, I don't want to say rebuild around them, but they add on to something, and they are a bright spot. So shout out to Fears. Seems like he's super efficient, which was something that I had concerns about, right? But yeah, he seems fine. Trey Johnson, I think he's good. And yeah, that's probably about it. The other ones I think have been a little underwhelming. Like we haven't really seen a whole lot from Ace Bailey. I think there's been,
Yeah, he's
you
had
know,
some good games as of late, but he got off to a really slow start.
the injuries, the illness that didn't really help. So, and Flag too. I think you do have to mention him. I know we already talked about him, but
Yeah.
early on he's faced a lot of adversity. I think already early in his career, right? Like his GM was fired. And the experimentation of putting him at the point guard, it is a lot of pressure. And I think he's dealt with it pretty well. And the numbers have looked a lot better. And defensively, he's a monster. So,
Yeah.
shout out to this rookie class. Definitely better than last year's.
Yeah, Will Richard, that's another guy,
Mm-hmm.
where now he's starting for the Warriors, right? I guess, when we get to the standings, we can, talk about them, but just, yeah, like that's another guy who's played super well. But, uh, any others like say top notch? I know we hadn't really spoken, since the draft, because I know you did some live streams with us, but, how are you feeling about a lot of the players that you've seen thus far?
Well, it's unfortunate that my rookie has yet to play. When I say my rookie to the audience, I'm a Heat fan, so my rookie is injured currently, and I call him KJ for
Yeah,
short, but Conspiracy. I can never pronounce his last name. I'm not even gonna attempt to pronounce that.
I can see that.
But yeah, but I think he's gonna be great. Like I said, you did bring up Ace Bailey. I do think Ace Bailey, with the opportunity, is getting more minutes now, and with more minutes, he's playing better basketball. I mean, against Atlanta, had 21, 8 for 13, 4 for 7. So you're seeing him improve every game. It's funny because how these rookies operate, it's like you see Ace Bailey kind of go up and VJ kind of go down a little bit when VJ had the hottest start. And but I think this class is amazing, and a lot of people are not talking about Dylan Harper because he was injured, right? He's dealing with an
Yeah,
injury and stuff. Only played 6 games, but you're getting exactly what you wanted in that pick, right? He's giving you 14, close to 36% from the 3-point line, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, close to 1 steal. And I feel like him and Castle are literally the future, or even possibly now with this team. And I do think a lot of the question was how these 3 guards can work out in De'Aaron Fox, Harper, and Castle. But if you do watch San Antonio, I do think they need that clutch, person that can get in the clutch and hit some big shots because the defense is so focused on Wemby. And Wemby, low key, if you guys been remember, against that Phoenix game, when they played a little defense on Wemby, a different defense that he hasn't seen, or it's a basic defense. They throw a little guard on him and have a big patrolling. And Wemby's still not a great passer as he should be yet, right? Like a Sengun or a Jokic. And he's just turning the ball over. They're making him take a bad shot. So I think down the stretch, having Fox being so clutch throughout the years, it actually helps them. And so with this Dylan Harper injury, it's unfortunate. But now you're inserting your star point guard that you always wanted, and then have Harper come off the bench. And I think that they're a very good team. So, like you said, this draft class is loaded. Con Canepo, I mean, dude, I just feel like with Charlotte, they're just cursed. I'm gonna tell you why they're cursed. Once again, 2K, LaMelo Ball. He's a good basketball player. Can't win you no games. Can't stay healthy. Plays no defense. Just puts up points, right? All the flashy stuff. Brandon Miller. No one talks about him. The dude can't stay healthy to save his life, right? So now you have LaMelo, Con Canepo, Brandon Miller. They also have that big man. I believe his name is Ryan.
Yeah, Kalkbrenner.
Exactly. So they're drafting the pieces, but they can't get the pieces on the court at the same time. And I think that's very unfortunate. But, shout out to Con. I mean, dude, he's putting up amazing numbers. But I will say, though, he's taking 23 shots, 17. I think his all that's going to go down when Melo comes back. But, I mean, he's definitely the top shooter in this draft class for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely a positive impact player. Yeah, and that's the cool thing about this draft, that there's so many guys, even like beyond just the top, right? Because we liked, all the players that were up there, right? Because like Dylan Harper, I think while he's out, I think he'll be missed, right? Just because it's not just, because it also his defense from the guard spot, his athleticism, his activity. I mean, he's really good. And Ace Bailey, like you mentioned, top notch, like just him getting more minutes, because the last few games that I've seen him play, he's been starting and he's looked a lot better and more comfortable out there, even with Markkanen, putting up his numbers, and Keontae George looking a lot better. So it's good to see, right? So just shout out to all those guys, because last year's draft class, right, hasn't been quite as great, right? Like, I mean, there are some good players in there, but which is what we all thought. Like, none of those guys in last year's draft were probably going to have like great player ceilings, right? Like maybe a lot of good players potentially, but even then, there's a few guys where it may just not work out for them. So, yeah. So, so let us know your thoughts in the comments on that. So I guess now we're in the standings discussion. So this is kind of where like we've done some, talks about the East and the Western Conference and power rankings. Of course, I remember every year, right? We'd have a stretch where as we get closer to the last stretch of the regular season, we're talking about standings like every day because they change every single day, every game, especially in the Western Conference. But I guess we'll start with there, right? So, so when we look at the Western Conference, right, you got OKC and Denver as the 1 and 2 seed. Don't really think that's much of a surprise, right? Both you and I picked the over for both of those teams, right? So we know that those, especially in the regular season, those two teams are going to win a lot of games. Denver's got some injuries. OKC's got injuries as well, and they've been just beating the brakes off of everybody. Then you have the Spurs, right? Because that was the team that we were actually lower on. We took the under. Looks like we're probably going to be wrong on that one because they have been really good to start the season. You have the Rockets. We were high on them. Even post Fred VanVleet injury, we still thought that they could both win a ton of games. Then you have the Lakers at 5, right? Obviously, that was a team that I think people were kind of split on, a little bit mixed on, depending on who you asked. Minnesota, right, got off to a slow start. Then you have the play-in teams, right, where you got Phoenix in there, which was actually one that we were higher on than most, and so far they've actually played very well this season. Devin Booker's been back, right? You got Portland, Golden State. I think some of that will change. Utah, they're going to have to lose some games because I believe their pick is top 8 protected. And then you have the bottom tier teams out of there with the Grizzlies, the Clippers, Kings, Mavs, Pelicans. Most of those teams we were not super high on, except for the Clippers. I was lower on them than you, but we both expected them to be, kind of in the mix for the playoffs, but they just haven't looked that great. They've had injuries. Kawhi's hurt. Beal's done for the season. But what do you think of this Western Conference, right? So far, how different is it to you compared to what we thought going into the season?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think Memphis was a surprise. I didn't expect them to be, kind of have so much turmoil. I know we talked about the injuries going into the season. We were like, all right, maybe not so much of a great start. Very odd, but I definitely didn't expect them to be 11th at the moment.
Right.
Definitely didn't really see the Spurs thing coming. I expected them to be, good, show us, some promising things, right, with, Dylan Harper and, all the other additions as well. But yeah, they've been very, very good defensively, and obviously, shooting the ball is still somewhat of a struggle, but at the same time, they've really, I think, handled that pretty well and offset that, with clutch moments and, like I said, defensive plays and just kind of stifling every other team. So they're definitely a surprise. But outside of that, I mean, I think we expected the Lakers to be good. I think we expected Minnesota to be, serviceable during the regular season. Phoenix, how about them? They're 8-5,
Yeah.
kind of wild. I mean, staying afloat. I don't think people have a whole lot of expectations for that team, but for them
Jalen
to,
Green game.
yeah, exactly. So, shout out to Book. He's having a great resurgence and reminding us, why he was ranked, where he was a few seasons ago. I think Portland, that's a bit of a surprise just considering, we didn't really know where they stood, but clearly I think they had a little bit of an inkling, right? Especially with the moves that they made in the offseason. So they feel pretty confident. They're definitely playing like it as well. Yeah, I mean that's really about it. I'm really just kind of still taken aback about how good the Spurs really have been, and it all goes back to Wemby.
Yeah. So, what do you think, Top Notch? Just because this Western Conference, like, there's a lot of good teams here for sure.
I was kind of, I wish my camera was freaking on because I wish y'all see my face when he said we thought the Lakers were we knew the Lakers were gonna be good. All right. So let me talk about this West, right? I'll get to the Lakers. So OKC, man, listen, I'm not surprised. The only thing that the league should be scared about is that J-Dub hasn't touched the court.
Right.
Dort's hurt, and you got players like Mitchell stepping up, right? And they're projected to have 2 lottery picks once again this upcoming draft. So all OKC is doing is literally just, okay, well, what's that rookie that they recently drafted this year, but he got cancer?
Nikola Topic.
Nikola Topic.
That was last year,
yeah.
Yep. So he's gonna bounce back. Hopefully everything goes well with him. Then he's gonna start dominating in a year or two. Then it's gonna be a cycle. That's the whole thing. It's a cycle with this OKC team because they're so loaded with draft capital, but they already have their star guys. And Chet is having that season where we all expected him to, right? Like playing really good basketball. So OKC not surprised about that. Denver not surprised about that. They made a lot of good moves. Only thing I'm surprised about is that Cam Johnson have been horrible. He's been terrible. And news came out today that Christian Brown is out for 6 weeks. So now that's interesting to see. But Christian Brown, his shot necessarily hasn't been there to start the year. So we'll see how that fixes. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. has filled that role perfectly coming off the bench. Then you look at San Antonio. Yeah, I'm surprised about them for sure. Like on paper, I'm like, this team looks very good, but can they figure it out? I mean, so far they have. Houston, honestly, I was high on them heading into the year, but then I watched one game, the first game of the season, and I judged too quick. I said, yeah, this team ain't going nowhere because that first game of the season, I think everybody remembers, they couldn't, they had no playmaking at all. There was too stagnant, half-court offense just wasn't good at all. But that's why everything takes time. Even Reed Shepard's looking a little bit better, so cool. Segu's looking like a superstar. You know what I mean? So then you look at the Rockets, the Lakers. So now we're at the Lakers. I knew the Lakers had Luka and I knew the Lakers had AR. But when I looked at the Lakers, I wasn't so high on them because AR, to me, did not finish the season well. He did not play in the playoffs as well as we thought he was. I felt like he had good moments, but not as, AR is a good basketball player, but he didn't play up to his standard in that playoff series. And so I'm like, okay, I'm questioning, can he be that second option? Because I knew LeBron, this is not the season where you're relying on LeBron, right? You're just not. This is not the year. You're relying on him heading into the playoffs and stuff like that. Not even really, but that's your GOAT. You want him out there. So I was questioning that, and then I have no faith in DeAndre Ayton. Remember, when they signed him, I had no faith. This dude's the softest center in the league, but he has played well. He has played well.
Right.
And I like the addition of Jake LaRavia, and he's been playing well, right? Marcus Smart been playing well. So all the new additions that they added in free agency have been playing well, and this is why they're winning games, right? Luka went out for a couple games. AR said, okay, I could be that number one option and dominate too, right? So good for them. Very interesting to see how everything clicks with LeBron being back. He'll be back soon. And then lastly, I mean, I think Minnesota needs a point guard if they really want to make a run. Rob Dillingham hasn't been it. Mike Conley's too old. Portland, I thought they got a squad over there. They're going to be good in a couple of years. Even if it's not this year, next year, they got a squad. Golden State's a weird team. Jimmy Butler and Draymond are already throwing shots at each other. I mean, you can't have those two people on the team. Like there's gonna be a fight that's gonna happen, and I want to know who wins that. But yeah, fun standings right now, and teams that are not gonna make the playoffs are the Kings, the Mavericks, the Pelicans, the Clippers, and Memphis and Utah.
Yeah. So yeah, because I mean, the thing is that you got the 10 teams that will be in the play-in, but even in the top 10, like you're gonna have a couple of teams that are gonna get knocked out. Because my guess, because I think Phoenix can be in the play-in, but I'd be surprised if they were top 8. I think the Warriors will be better. Their schedule's been really rough. They've had a lot of back-to-backs against a lot of good teams, and I think they'll be better. They're still kind of like the Lakers. They're like they have to make adjustments to the roster through trade. It's not quite good enough to be able to, come out of the West. And even then, like OKC and Denver, like that's the problem a lot of these teams have is those two teams are really good. Can you actually beat probably both of those teams, right? Because, if most of these other teams, especially if Denver and OKC are the 2 and the 1 seed, like you're going to have to probably go through one of them in the second round, one of them in the conference final. So you almost kind of have to hope that it's like last year where one of those teams, probably Denver, falls into like the 4 or 5 spot, and then they're forced to play each other. So then they can't play in the conference finals. Because otherwise, I think it's going to be really tough for other teams to be able to beat both of them. Because, like, I think Minnesota, we've seen them match up well against Denver, but they look like a bad matchup against Oklahoma City. I don't think they have, like you mentioned, they don't have a lot of point guard play. So I think that'd be kind of tricky for them. And, against OKC, that's a juggernaut. Because, like you mentioned, they're not even whole. And they still have been blowing teams out, right? They had the back-to-backs against Golden State and the Lakers where it just made them look like they didn't even belong on the same court together. So, and those are teams that are also kind of trying to vie for contention in the Western Conference. So,
yeah, top notch. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but familiarize yourself with our audience and, who did you have coming out of the West if you had anybody, like preseason or, around the start of the season. And, even if you had a team that you wanted to, shout out for like a title or something, who do you think is going to win it?
Oh, there's two sides of me, man, right?
Okay.
One side is me being what's the word? Angry, mad because I wanted Russ still on Denver because I thought that was his best chance of winning a championship. So I was like, yo, Denver's winning this upcoming season after I seen all those additions. F them. Right? Yeah, we don't care about them no more, right? But that's like that would have been my pick, right?
Okay.
So that would have been my pick. I thought Denver's a very good team, right? Watching the season start and watching all teams play. And I feel like the easy one just to say OKC. We're gonna be spicy, right? We can't be boring. We can't just say OKC, bro. We ain't about to do that. I think OKC wins the West easily. What we're gonna do is it's gonna be a hot take, and that's completely fine. Hot takes. I think the Houston Rockets win the Western Conference.
I love this guy. That is exactly who I picked in the preseason. Take it away, please. Let the people know.
I really like their team. I think they're improving each game. I think you have a great head coach that already been to a finals, and he knows what he's doing, right? He runs certain lineups of, okay, well, we're going to take our best player out, but we're going to put Steven Adams in there so we can be taller than these other teams. Also, they'll be like, okay, we don't need Steven Adams. We're going to go smaller. Their team is so effective. And, Yarby, don't forget, They don't have their player in Dorian Finney-Smith yet back from injury, who plays a big factor. And Chris, you should know this because he was on your team.
Yep.
He could play the small ball four. You could
Yep.
try to get the small ball. So they get those several lineups out there. They got Clint Capella. Injuries, right? We could talk injuries. If Steven Adams go down, right, that's a big loss. But okay, let's just throw Clint in there. Okay, you still got Sengun. You got the Dorian Finney-Smith. Reed Shepard's only getting better each game, each rep that he's playing, right? Kevin Durant, he just dropped 30 points today. They just went out there and won today, right? I think this Houston Rockets team is intact. I think they do a buyout move. Maybe to get another guard on this team during the buyout market because obviously they lost Fred VanVleet. But this is only going to help Amen Thompson with his career and the team for the future, because now that he's the main guy, it's helping Sengun with the ball handling. I mean, dude, this Rockets team is legit.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think it's funny because we all went into this summer really liking this team, right? And then I think even when VanVleet went down, right, obviously it was going to be tricky. But I think the question is what's the confidence level that they can go out and get somebody who could probably help them, point guard wise? Because I think because they're in the apron, I don't even know if they can realistically get somebody in the buyout market that makes like a lot of money. It would probably have to be like, if it's a buyout market, somebody on the cheaper side. But then trade wise, I think the real question is like, will they be willing to put VanVleet in there? Because that's the guy where his contract, that's probably the guy that you'd put in there in order to get you, some type of point guard. Like we've talked about, like CJ McCollum. We've talked about if Boston were willing to do it like a Derek White or somebody like that. Because if they can get that, that's where I think they're going to be, right there with those other teams where it's like, okay, let's just, like you said, let's just kind of play for a second and just say, let's say that like Denver isn't there, or let's say like OKC, because they, nobody's won back-to-back. Maybe something happens. Maybe somebody, knock on wood, hopefully doesn't, but maybe somebody gets hurt. Something stupid happens, and it's not OKC, and it's not Denver. And that's the question that I think, that everybody's trying to figure out is, okay, there has to be some other team potentially that's like right there. Like say last year in the East, it was Indiana, where like nobody was picking Indiana to come out of the East, right? It was Boston, it was New York, and then maybe Cleveland, probably not quite as much. And then maybe some people were picking Milwaukee, right? But, in the Western Conference, it's mostly been OKC and Denver. So that's the question where whatever the best version of one of those teams are, like what is it? And that's where, like with Houston offensively, they're the number one offense in the league. Some of those shooting splits will probably come down. Like Tari Eason probably won't shoot 50% from three. But like you mentioned, Reed Shepard is getting better. So it's a really good team, right? Like so far, they're checking a lot of the boxes in terms of like they're also kind of beating the brakes off of most teams that they've played against, right? Like we haven't seen a ton of games with them playing against the best teams, right? Like they played Oklahoma City, but that's the first game of the season. You can kind of throw that one away just because it's everybody's first game, right? Like nobody's played a regular season game together, right? They played the Spurs, okay, but let's see what it looks like as the season goes on, because that is a team where as these guys get more comfortable playing alongside one another, getting more reps, getting more experience with Sengun and Thompson having the ball in their hands, that's where it could help. So that's what I want to see. I want to see what it looks like offensively come playoff time. And like you mentioned, Dorian Finney-Smith, if he can be healthy, that'll hopefully be a really good addition for them, right? He hasn't played at all. He's had an ankle injury or surgery that dates back to last year with the Lakers, right? I think he had that issue with LA where he would be in and out of some games. But
Chris, let me say this. Let me just say this one, right? So the Rockets are 8-1 in their last 9 games. They literally just put BTA on the Portland Trailblazers just right now, 140 to 113. I mean, when you just look at the numbers, look at this, right? I haven't even brought up Jabari Smith, right? But Jabari had 22, Sengun had 25 and 10, and Durant had 30, right? Like this team is a really good team. Steven Adams had 11 rebounds. I mean, they just play good basketball, right? Shepard had 13, 3 and 3. They're now 8-3. In the last 11, 9-1 in the last 10. This is a good team, man. And like I said, Portland's I remember back in the day, not back in the day, but a couple like last year, years before, you see Portland on the schedule, like That's a dub. Let's give it to our schedule. Now you see Portland on the schedule. You can't just go out there and be like, "Yo, this ain't a free dub." You got to go out there and play. They got some guys over there, man. So I think this Rockets team is fun. Hopefully they continue to keep hooping. And like you said, Chris, no one ever thought Indiana was going to be in the finals. Right? Injuries are part of the game, and that's very unfortunate. Something will happen this year that's going to be like, damn, what if? Right? Happened in the finals with Tyrese Halliburton. I don't know what's going to happen this year, but that's how the NBA is, right? I feel like every playoffs there's always a big injury that only if. So yeah, I'm with you on the Rockets.
Yeah, it's tough to make a case against Oklahoma City because they're so good. So like when you're picking these other teams, like I had the Nuggets, but even then I'm like, yeah, I like it wouldn't. Is it going to be shocking if OKC wins at all? Like absolutely not. So it's hard to make a strong case against Oklahoma City aside from nobody's been able to go back to back just because it's so difficult now, to stay healthy and everything else. But might as well also, want to close it out, turn our attention towards the Eastern Conference because there will have to be a team that will come out of the East. We'll see if they actually have a shot to be able to win it all. But, you look at the Eastern Conference, there's a team sitting up in the number one spot that was also kind of a team that a lot of people were split and polarized on, right? Like even with you and I, like I had the over, you had the under, but even then, like neither of us looked at them as like, could they be like the 1 or 2 seed? And it's still early. But the Detroit Pistons, right? They're sitting there 11-2. They've won 9 in a row. I believe they just won as we were recording. They won a game over the Sixers, and the last few games have had a skeleton crew out there where it's not even like say you like Cade Cunningham. He had the game against Washington, but even then, like outside of that, like the last few games he hasn't played. Duran hasn't played. Both of those guys have been great. Duran has taken this huge leap. Now he's basically a 20-10 guy, and also defensively has been great. I love their young core in terms of the pieces they put together, but it was kind of weird to figure the team out because they have so many young players. They lost some vets, so were they really going to be better? It's probably still going to be tough for them to win a playoff series, but they do have Cade Cunningham, who now has established himself as one of the best stars in the league. And like I said, they play super hard on the defensive end. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league. Just the offense is a little bit tricky, but you do have a superstar. And then after that, you have the Knicks, right? The Knicks and the Cavs, basically right there next to each other. Those were the two teams that we had in tier 1 when we did our tiers in the Eastern Conference. Brunson's hurt. They should still probably be able to win some of these games without him just because they have other good players. Now OG Anunoby's hurt. We'll see if he doesn't stay hurt for long. Hopefully he can come back soon. But that was the team that we had coming out of the Eastern Conference. Then you have Cleveland, right? Garland now is hurt again. So they haven't had a lot of games where they played at full strength. You have the Hawks at 4. That was a team that a lot of people were pretty high on and kind of looked, and they were looked at as the dark horse with all their pieces. They got off to a slow start, but now they've won 4 in a row, 7-3 in their last 10. Trae Young is hurt. They've actually won most of the games while he's been out, so that's something to pay attention to because he's up for an extension. Do they pay him? And do they kind of go all in? Because that'll be a really expensive roster. Or maybe they decide to cut some corners, trade Porzingis or whatever, because there's been rumors about that. I'm not sure. Sixers sitting up there at 5, right? You have got a 3-way tie between them, the Bucks, and the Raptors, where that was a team where we had no idea what to expect. I think we both took the over going into the season because we just thought, well, there's no way they're going to be as bad as they were last year. They have Edgecombe and Maxey, who both played great. Maxey looks like an all-NBA guard. Even with Embiid in and out, they're still able to win games, although they just lost to Detroit with nobody. So that's not great. But now Embiid's hurt, but also Paul George hasn't even played. So factor that in. The Bucks, that was a team where I think we were not very high on that team going into the season. And so far, they've been better than we thought. I don't know how it will look playoff wise, but based on how the Eastern Conference has played out, right? Like they don't look like a team that's just woefully disadvantaged. Mainly, they've had some young guys like Ryan Rollins and some of these other guys who've played so well, where like they look better than I think we would have expected. Raptors, another team where we thought they'd be okay. They've been playing much better. Then you have the Bulls who started off well. They've kind of tapered off because of some injuries, although they're expected to get back. Both of their guys, Giddey and Kobe White. who's in a contract year. Then you have the Magic. That's the team that's very disappointing to start off the season. But they actually have been playing much better. They've won 3 in a row, but now Paolo's hurt, right? But we did see the stretch where last year he was out, Franz was able to carry, but we haven't really seen them pull off a lot of strong wins with both of them together. With Suggs, Desmond Bain got off to a slow start. He's been better. So I don't know. They look like they might just be okay. I mean, they might be better as they kind of get their legs under them, but disappointing start. Heat sitting at 10. We actually took the over on them. We liked the addition of Norman Powell with their guys. Bam has been hurt. Hero's not played at all. Their offense has been great, fast paced, fun to watch. And then after that, the bottom half or the non-playing teams is pretty much what we thought. We weren't very high on Boston. We like Charlotte's young players, but we just thought there's going to be injuries. And then the Nets and Pacers and Wizards all have 1 win each, which is not great. But the Nets we thought would stink. Pacers, injuries, they're cursed, but they'll probably come into next season with a top 3 pick. So that's going to be funny. And then the Wizards, I took the over on them. Now I look like a fool. So, I mean, but the thing with them is like they're there with Brooklyn where it's like if their record isn't great, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just, the difference is they do have some young players that have played well. The Nets, I don't know what I'm looking at. Like they've been really awful, and their young players don't even really play a ton, right? I mean, I think Yegor, right, that was their top pick. He starts, but he's not really been that good, and most of the other guys are just, I don't know, doesn't look that great. But in fairness, their team is horrible. So I at least, maybe give them another year, see what it looks like. I mean, Cam Thomas is hurt. Unfortunately, he's in the qualifying offer year, so that's not great. Michael Porter Jr., I guess he's played relatively well on a horrible team, putting up numbers, but not really a lot of positives there. So what do you two think about the Eastern Conference so far?
Yeah, I remember one of my hot takes before the season started was I thought that the Eastern Conference was going to be just as entertaining, if not more entertaining than the Western Conference. I don't think it's lived up to that, but it has been super intriguing, especially with Detroit being atop of the standings, right? The Knicks had a little bit of a slow start, but they've definitely ramped things up and picked it up a little bit. Now they're kind of sitting back at number 2, which is good, but I think they still should be, driving the Eastern Conference. That's how I feel about that team. Cleveland as well, kind of a similar boat. I'm glad Atlanta's turned things around a little bit. Philly and Milwaukee are definitely a surprise for me. I thought the records would probably be inversed at this point. I thought they would be maybe like 5-7. I didn't think they'd be above 500, either of those teams. So shout out to Philly. Shout out to the collection of guys that are hooping over there. Definitely shout out to Milwaukee, right? Shout out to Giannis because I think he's having an MVP kind of caliber season. Obviously, the talent surrounding him hasn't been, the best, but those guys have definitely, I think, surpassed expectations, especially mine, right? Like Ryan Rollins, like you were talking about, moving Kyle Kuzma to the bench. It's just better for the entire organization as a whole. Shout out to Toronto. That was a team where we didn't outright say they were going to be bad. We kind of just thought that they were kind of one of those teams where, middling of the pack, but also have the potential to be pretty good because they have so many ways they can attack you offensively, and then defensively they can somewhat hold their own because you do have a guy like Scotty Barnes. But it was just kind of the big man, I guess, position that was a little bit of a worry for us. But Pirtle's back healthy. Toronto seems pretty solid. So, if they can potentially get out of the play-in spot, that would be, amazing for them. Bulls tapered off pretty badly, went on a 4-game losing streak. I think that was somewhat to be expected, but still great internal development from them. And then, like you said, Orlando, very, very disappointing. Miami, I think there's things to like and things to not like, but let's just blame it on health just because. But overall, I think the Eastern Conference is shaping up to be pretty fun to watch. And yeah, shout out to Detroit because that really came out of nowhere for me.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, man, listen, I'm being straight biased when it comes to the Eastern Conference. Listen, my team ain't healthy. My team is going to win the Eastern Conference. We ain't scared of nobody. The last couple games, we're just missing our top guys. I mean, Norm is a bucket. They really traded us Norm for change, and then they thought Bradley Beal was going to replace Norm. Good luck with that, but he can't even. They really thought Bradley Beal was replacing Norman Powell. That was never going to happen. I'm waiting for Bam to come back. I think Jaime is 6th man of the year. I think we have one of the top benches in the league. And then you look at the East don't scare me. I was talking to my Heat supporters and stuff like that. I said, man, if Detroit's number one, and we ain't worried about none. Straight up, we ain't worried about none. Right? Like we could beat New York. That was a bad loss today, right? But New York hasn't even won a game away. They're only good at home so far. Philly, we ain't worried about. They can't even. Joe and B steps on the court, his knees buckling down. The Cavaliers are frauds. They're just fraud. I think this year they're just bad. They're not a good team as they were last year, and they beat us up last year. That's cool, but we see what happened when they played a real team. Atlanta, they're cool, right? But Trae Young will be back, so that record will go down because they only play better without him. Toronto's a fun team to watch. I think Emmanuel Quickly's having a really good year. So is Scotty. Ryan Rollins. When you just look at the Bucks right now, you think of Giannis, but you think of Ryan Rollins. That's what you think about when you look at the Bucks. And Orlando, not worried about them. They don't have a point guard. And yeah, man, I mean, Colin Kanepo just hit a clutch 3 to tie the game up against Milwaukee. That dude's a bucket. Yeah, man. East is Miami's winning the East.
Wow, bold take.
Yep.
Yeah, so
I mess with it though. I like the confidence. I can't say anything. So
yeah, that's the thing about the East is that we had kind of a thought process of Knicks, Cavs, and then kind of just everyone else. But you always open the door for that Pacer type team to make a run if something crazy happens. And I'm curious to see which team that's going to be because I think a lot of people looked at that as Atlanta or Orlando. And like I said, Orlando's been kind of disappointing. So it may just not be a great year. As I was saying, when you look at the Eastern Conference in terms of the standings, like that's kind of the question is who's that other team that could potentially kind of come in and mess everything up, like the Pacers did last year, right? Because I remember we picked against the Pacers every round, right? Picked against them literally every round in the Eastern Conference, even though we gave them, credit and respect as a team, but they kept surprising us. They kept playing way better than I think we thought. And unfortunately, now it's been a disastrous year for them. So this is not going to be a year for them. But that's kind of what I'm curious about in the Eastern Conference is that one feels like it might just be wide open. Because even like Top Notch was saying with the Knicks and the Cavs, I don't feel like they've done enough to make me feel like they're head and shoulders just better than everybody else as of right now, right? Like, I mean, of course it could get to that point at later on, but I haven't felt that way watching them just yet, in my opinion. I mean, like I said, it's funny because if you look back at say the first 10 games every season, right? Like I remember when we did our podcast early on last season, and it was like the Warriors are at the top of the Western Conference, and we're like, oh wow, they're 12-man team. Is this actually working? I think the Suns, right, were way up there. Where they were at the beginning of last season, they were playing great basketball. And some of these other teams like Minnesota were like not playing very well at all, and everything else. So it's just kind of funny how it turns out. Yeah. So I'm curious to see how it goes on just because it is 10, 12 games, early in the season. But, once you get to 20, I think we'll have a much better understanding of what we're looking at here. Although we have seen the last several seasons, you have these late bloomers that come in and, start, and those are the teams that make the deep runs, right? Like, Dallas, the Miami Heat, right? The play-in team that made the finals. Mm-hmm. The Lakers that got to the conference finals, right? The Warriors, maybe they get to the conference finals last year if Steph doesn't get hurt, but I'm liking what I'm seeing so far from a lot of these teams. So like I said, there are some teams that are a little bit disappointing, but it all evens out, it all balances out. And just super impressive by a lot of these young teams too, because some of those young teams I think have been way better than I think we probably thought.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, just letting your mic is off. I don't know if you had anything else that you needed to add. Before we get to the final part.
Yeah, the screen was frozen. But anyways, yeah, I think the Heat are gonna win it, man. I'm standing on that. And what's today? Today is November 14th. So when we come back in a couple months, and we're raising that trophy up, Bam wins his that ring. Tyler winning Finals MVP. Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun, man.
All right.
All right.
I
So,
like it.
yeah, so now, as we usually do, we'll close it out with our polls that we do. So, our last short that we put out on IG, we asked the question of, are the Detroit Pistons a contender? And 100% of the responses said yes. So far, it seems like a lot of people are liking what they're seeing from the Detroit Pistons. Like I said, I have questions about offensively, how it's going to look in the playoffs, because I don't like the fact that they don't have a lot of great 3-point shooting. I mean, they have some guys who can knock down threes. Like you got Duncan Robinson, Isaiah Stewart. Now he's playing with Duran because Tobias Harris is hurt, and He's like a 40% 3-point shooter now. They're just terrorizing other teams' front courts. But it feels like they still have less perimeter shooting than last year. And then there's the Jaden Ivey piece where he hasn't played yet. Hadn't even really mentioned that, so I'm curious to see how that looks. But they look really good so far. I mean, they haven't had like a crazy schedule where they played a lot of top teams, but they've gotten a lot of great wins where, like I said, nobody's playing. And shout out to Bickerstaff because he's clearly established a great culture there as well. Because you need that culture if you're going to get those type of wins, right? Because like I said, the last few games they've played, nobody's been playing, and you're playing like the Sixers. Yeah, Embiid's not there, but they have Maxey, they have Edgecombe, they have all their other guys. So like that's a game you could have easily just said, yeah, this is a loss. We might as well just kind of not necessarily give up, but like that's a game that we're not going to win. But they just keep finding ways to win.
Yeah, I actually really like what I've seen from that team. It's really been phenomenal, right? Like the defensive intensity is there. Obviously, you have Cade spearheading your offense. That's pretty much as good as you can really get. And then Duran and the other guys taking leaps. Like even a Sore Thompson, I think offensively giving them, some things here and there is a big help. And like you said, I think the biggest factor is we don't even have Jaden Ivey yet back yet. So like we haven't even really seen him yet.
Right.
I think they're a fun regular season team. I think they win one round and they get bounced out early in the second.
Fair.
And that's not bad, right? Because they didn't
No.
win last year. That's not bad at all. It's called improvement. We haven't brought him up. Tobias Harris hasn't played either. So I know a lot of people are not the biggest fans of Tobias Harris, but I mean he's still a big piece of their team. And so it also shows you that they can win without their key guys. And technically, I don't think Tobias is all that, but to them, it's their key guys, and they can win hopefully with their key guys. But I think they're a second round elimination. They're only getting better. They're building a culture, and that's what you want to see from a young team to get established. That's how teams win championships. Look at OKC. I think Houston's is around the corner, right? They added that ventured piece in KD, but they're majority a young team over there too. So yeah, I think Detroit is they're doing very well. It's funny though because Cade had one of the craziest performances, had like 40 plus points on 40 attempts.
Yep.
Still winning the game. That was pretty
and,
funny.
and he had to take a lot of those shots because I mean he had so many guys out. It's not like he was just ball hogging or whatever. Like he had no choice.
Yeah, they find a way to win. That's what it's about.
Yeah, so
That's all it reminds me of, and Yarby will like this one. We don't like the Eagles over here, but Jalen Hurts always finds a way to win. He wins ugly. He wins ugly. He wins the blowout, but he always finds a way to win.
I feel that,
right.
bro.
Yeah, that is what you have to do. So, so we appreciate you joining us, Top Notch. Where can people find you?
Honestly, man, it's all good, man. Listen, the main focus is you guys, man. We're trying to grow this podcast as much as possible, man. They're good guys. Let's get that 500 subs, and I do a face reveal. You guys know who I be. But nah, man. Like I said, good episodes. Hopefully next time my camera's fixed, though, realistically, and hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Obviously, with the NBA being start off really good right now. The views are up without our GOAT, LeBron James, which is very good for the NBA. Tell him, right? Yeah, man, just make sure you continue to keep liking, sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to join in and leave comments on any of our socials at the OBT Podcast, continue to like and subscribe. We appreciate all the support. We'll see you next episode.